The man took out a pair of handcuffs and put the woman on the bed, and then swallowed the small blue pill, ready to rekindle his passion with the woman, who expected that the 50-year-old was too excited, and just about to start a heart attack. With a violent tremor, he died directly on the woman. She tried her best to support her husband's body, but not only did her husband not wake up, but also fell to the ground heavily. The woman's hands were still roasted at the head of the bed, and no one could help her untie the handcuffs, so she had to shout for help. But there was no one near this villa. She thought that her husband was joking with her, so she asked her husband to get up quickly. But seeing her husband's blood flowing all over the ground, she was completely discouraged. The sky gradually darkened. The woman had dried her tears. She heard a noise at the door, and hurriedly called for help outside. The shadow was getting closer and closer. It was a wild dog sneaking in. She was so hungry that her eyes were green, and she actually approached her husband's corpse. The woman kicked her legs hard and ate the wild dog loudly, but the strong smell of blood still tempted the wild dog to come forward. She greedily licked the blood on the ground, and was not afraid of the woman at all, and even grabbed her husband's arm, wanting to have a full meal. The woman struggled, but the handcuffs could only move up and down, and finally took off the book on the storage board, threw it at the wild dog, and looked at the wild dog's mouth. The woman explained to her husband repeatedly, but when she looked at it, her husband was still lying on the floor, and the two husbands were in the same space, and the woman didn't know what was going on for a while. "I'm sure you're just losing your mind." Her husband smiled and reminded her not to let time go in vain, and now she was the only one who could save her. And now the woman swept the corpse. Her eyes fell on a pair of handcuffs. She tried her best to break free, gritted her teeth, endured the pain caused by the friction. Fortunately, her hands were small enough to get into the handcuffs. After freeing one hand, the other hand was much simpler. She broke the pillar at the head of the bed with great force, and finally escaped, and the woman walked to the door in a dashing manner. But when she looked back, she was still chained to the bed. And now the woman was surrounded not only by her husband's vision, but also her own vision, and they chattered and quarreled, and even revealed a secret. The woman shook her head vigorously to drive out all the illusions in her mind, and then she took a deep breath and thought about the way to escape. The mobile phone was on the bedside table. If you got it, you could find someone to save you, but the leg was very short when it was used. She couldn't get it anyway. The sound of the wild dog being biting at a good meal terrified the woman, and the time had passed for 6 hours. And she herself was hungry and thirsty, remembering that her husband had put the water cup on the storage board after taking the medicine, and the woman rekindled her hope. She grabbed the partition with all her strength, and then worked together to tilt the partition, and soon saw the glass water cup. She adjusted her breathing, raised her left hand to the highest, and the moment the line slid down, her right hand took it in her hand. But her husband's vision was gloating. It was too ugly, less than 20 centimeters away, but it completely stumped the thirsty woman. He calmed himself down, first put the water cup back in its place. If he was thirsty to death, it would also become food in the belly of the wild dog. He pondered for a long time, and finally thought of a good way. This pajama on his body was newly bought, and the tag that he took off during the day was placed on the storage board. He reached out and took it down, and laboriously rolled it into a straw, and then took it in his mouth again, and took off the water cup again. The length of the straw was just right. He took a few gulps greedily, but the only water source could not be drunk in one go. She put the glass and straw back, and the long mental tension finally soothed the fatigue and overcame the fear, and let the woman fall into a deep sleep. But the wild dog suddenly woke up, as if feeling the danger approaching her, and hurriedly fled the room. The woman also woke up in her sleep, and there seemed to be a dark figure standing in the corner walking slowly towards her. She smiled strangely, opened the box in her hand. It was full of jewels, and more was human bones. The woman closed her eyes and prayed that the terrible man was just an illusion, but her husband reminded her that the man was probably the Grim Reaper. "I love you." Yo-Yo television series exclusive. The man had disappeared, but the husband looked at the woman under the bed, and she didn't dare to breathe, but one hand still stretched out. That cold dirty hand. Chinese subtitle volunteer Li Zongxing. This intimate title is very repulsive to women, because many years ago, my father used to call herself like this. At that time, the family went on vacation to the countryside together, just in time for the 30-year day, when the mother took the younger brother out to the shore, leaving only him and his father, who held a homemade observer and watched the sun be swallowed up little by little. But his father looked at his increasingly beautiful face and had a lewd idea. That's embarrassing? No,